What if a moment of recklessness unraveled a part of yourself you never knew was hidden? In a room full of celebration, a man raised a glass, unaware that a simple dare would pull back the curtain on his carefully constructed life. The hum of laughter filled the private lounge of Elysian, a restaurant bathed in soft gold light and the pride of its newest owner, Adrian Vale. Around him, 5 friends toasted the empire he had spent a decade building 10 restaurants, 10 cities, and not a single misstep. "Here's a challenge," said Cole Bennett, his childhood friend, and perhaps the only person brave enough to poke holes in Adrian's polished armor. "Kiss the next waitress who walks through that door." Adrian raised an eyebrow over his glass, amused but unimpressed. "Are we really doing this?" Cole smirked. "Come on, when's the last time you did something without running the numbers first?" The others quieted, curious. At 35, Adrian was the blueprint of composure, flawless suits, flawless plans, flawless timing. Chaos had no place in his world. "That's childish," he said, but something in him stirred. Maybe it was the bourbon. Maybe it was the way success had started to feel predictable. Cole leaned forward, voice low. 50 grand to the winner's charity unless you've lost your fire." Adrian's pride flinched. "Fine," he said, setting his glass down. "Next waitress it is." Oliver, another friend, lifted a hand. "Not one of ours." "That's cheating." Someone from across the street. Adrian nodded. "Deal." 20 minutes passed, then she appeared. A young woman in a black apron, balancing a tray of drinks with quiet grace, moved through the hallway outside their lounge. Her uniform bore the logo of Mira Trattoria, the Italian place just across the avenue. Blonde hair tied loosely, shoulders squared despite the weariness in her step. "There," Cole whispered. Adrian stood. The room fell silent. He walked out. She didn't notice him until he spoke, his voice soft but confident. "Excuse me." She turned. Her eyes were blue, but not the sparkling kind, no. These were tired eyes, like the ocean after a storm. "You're doing an incredible job," he said. A faint smile flickered across her lips. "Thanks, but I really need to deliver these." Then, without asking, Adrian leaned in and kissed her. It was quick, meant to be harmless, a gesture to win a dare. But for a heartbeat, time stood still. Instead of pulling away, she kissed him back, purposefully. Then she leaned in and whispered so only he could hear, "I know who you are, Mr. Vale. Try that again, and the world will know you differently than you like to be seen." She stepped back, calm, composed. She didn't shout, didn't cause a scene. She simply walked away, spine straight, tray steady. Adrian remained rooted in place, his breath caught in his chest, not from the kiss, but from the mirror she had just held up to his face. Behind him, Cole emerged. Did that really just happen? Adrian didn't answer. He just stared ahead and whispered to himself, "I lost the bet." Adrian stood frozen in the hallway, eyes fixed on the place where she'd disappeared. "What did she say to you?" Cole asked, catching up to him. "You look like you saw a ghost." Adrian didn't answer. He just turned and walked back into the private room. But the celebration around him had lost its color. Laughter and clinking glasses faded into a distant hum as her words replayed in his mind, sharp, clear, and unexpected. So was the warmth of her lips and the quiet fire in her eyes. That night, after the last toast and the final goodbye, Adrian found himself asking his general manager a question that surprised even him. "The blonde waitress from Mira Trattoria. Do we know anything about her?" "Think her name's Elise Morgan," the manager replied. "Hard worker. Pulls double shifts most days. Word is she's taking care of a younger sister, some kind of long-term hospital stay." Adrian's eyes drifted toward the window, to the glow of the rival restaurant across the street. "No reason," he said softly. "Just curious." The next morning, Adrian woke before the sun. For once, his phone stayed untouched, no stock updates, no emails. Instead, there was only one thought in his mind: Elise Morgan, her exhaustion, her strength, the fact that she'd looked right through him and didn't flinch. For the first time in years, a man with everything he could possibly own found himself unsettled and captivated by someone who seemed untouched by any of it. 3 days later, he was still thinking about her. At 9 p.m., Jedi stood across the street from Mira Trattoria, watching her glide between tables with quiet precision. "This is insane," he muttered, then pushed the door open anyway. He asked to be seated in her section. When Elise approached and recognized him, she nearly dropped her notepad. "You've got to be kidding me," she mumbled, voice flat. "What can I get you, sir?" "Just coffee," Adrian said gently. "And?" "A moment of your time." "I'm working," she replied without missing a beat, her professional mask firmly in place. "Coffee coming right up." When she returned, he spoke before she could leave again. "I owe you an apology. That kiss? It wasn't right. It was part of a foolish dare, and I'm sorry." She studied him. I figured as much. Her tone was cool, but not cruel. Apology noted. Some of us actually have to work for a living. She walked away. He left a $100 bill beside a $5 cup of coffee. The next night he came again. And again. By his fifth visit, her cold detachment had faded into something else, not warmth, but recognition. "Don't you have your own restaurants to haunt?" she said, refilling his cup without being asked. "Yours makes better coffee," he smiled. She rolled her eyes. "What do you really want, Mr. Vale?" "Adrian, please. And I'd like a chance to make this right. Maybe over dinner?" "No, thank you," she answered, the words firm and immediate. "I don't date customers, especially the kind who kiss strangers on a dare." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and something in her face changed. "Excuse me," she said, stepping away. "Rachel, is everything okay?" Adrian watched from a distance as concern clouded her features. When she returned, her face was composed, but the tension hadn't left. "Everything all right?" he asked quietly. "It's fine," she replied automatically. "Your check is ready whenever you are." The following week, he returned once more, this time just as her shift ended. He waited outside under the amber glow of the street light as she stepped out, looking worn and cold under her coat. "Are you following me now?" she asked, wrapping the fabric tighter around her. "I was hoping to catch you," he admitted. "No games, no dares, just coffee. A real conversation." She checked her watch, then looked up at him, tired, wary. "I need to get home to my sister." "Just 15 minutes," Adrian said gently. "There's a diner around the corner. Open late." Elise hesitated. For a moment the streetlight caught the tired lines under her eyes. Then finally she gave a quiet nod. 15. The diner was nearly empty, the kind of place where the silence hummed beneath the flickering neon lights. They found a booth tucked away in the corner, far from the world. And for the first time, Adrian watched Elise let out a breath, just a little. Her shoulders loosened as she wrapped her hands around a mug of hot chocolate, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "Your sister," Adrian said softly. "Is she all right?" The question caught her off guard. For a second, she blinked at him, like she wasn't sure how much to say. "She's getting there," Elise said finally. "Car accident, 6 months ago. Spinal surgery. It's been a hard road." Adrian listened, silent. "I worked doubles to keep up with the bills. Insurance only goes so far." There was no bitterness in her tone, just truth, spoken plainly. "That must be exhausting," he said. "It's life," she replied with a shrug. "Not all of us have empires to fall back on." Adrian gave a faint smile, acknowledging the hit. "Fair enough. I've worked hard, but I've also been handed opportunities most people never get. Like the opportunity to kiss random waitresses for fun." He winced. "Touché. I deserve that." To his surprise, she smiled just a little. Yeah, you did. 15 minutes turned into 30, then an hour. Elise spoke of Rachel, her sister's stubbornness through physical therapy, her dream of going to college despite everything. And Adrian found himself drawn in, not just to her words, but to the quiet strength behind them. She didn't seek sympathy, she simply lived. Eventually, Elise looked up and asked, "Why restaurants?" Adrian leaned back, thoughtful. "I started in a kitchen, as a line cook. Food was the one thing my father didn't criticize. When I cooked, he actually shut up for once." For the first time that night, she really looked at him, not the tailored suit, not the headlines, but the man beneath. "So behind all that polished billionaire charm," she said slowly, "there's a human being. Disappointing, isn't it?" he teased. Elise checked her watch suddenly. Her mood shifted. "I have to go. Rachel will worry. Can I walk you home?" "No," she said quickly, pulling on her coat. This was not terrible, but it doesn't change anything. As she turned to leave, Adrian called after her, "Elise, if you ever need anything, I don't need your charity," she cut in, sharp. "I meant someone to talk to." She paused, just a moment. Her expression softened ever so slightly. "Good night, Adrian." He watched her disappear into the quiet street, and for the first time in years, he realized how rare it was to be seen not as a brand or a bank account, but as a person, and how deeply refreshing that felt. "You've never been to a farmer's market?" Elise asked, half laughing, as she led Adrian through the maze of stalls. "How is that even possible?" Adrian shrugged, awkward in his designer hoodie among the sweatshirts and canvas bags. "I have people who shop for me." "Of course you do." She rolled her eyes. "Well, today you're shopping for yourself." What had started as occasional coffee visits had grown into something neither of them named a quiet rhythm, a reluctant friendship. That morning, after mentioning her Sunday ritual, Elise had been surprised when Adrian simply asked, "Can I come with you?" And even more surprised when he actually showed up. He trailed behind her as she examined each vendor's produce, checking for bruises, comparing prices, her movements efficient and purposeful. "Here," she said, handing him a strawberry. "Try this." He bit into it. His eyes widened. "That's amazing. Better than the ones at your 5-star spots?" "Much better." "I'll take 2 baskets," he told the vendor. "One is enough," Elise corrected. "You're just one person." "2," Adrian insisted, grinning. Elise gave him a sideways glance. "Fine. 1 basket." As they made their way through the market, Adrian began to notice things that hadn't caught his attention before. The way morning sunlight danced in her hair, the quiet transformation of her face when she laughed, how she spoke to elderly vendors, gentle, patient, always with respect. Over coffee from a stand tucked between flower stalls, Adrian hesitated before speaking. "I made a few calls," he said, "about Rachel's insurance. There's a specialist I know, someone who might be able to help her case." Elise's smile vanished. She stared into her coffee, the steam curling up into the cool morning air. "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know," Adrian replied quietly, "but I had a way to help. Just a consultation. No strings." She stirred her drink, conflict written across her face. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian didn't respond right away. He looked out at the bustle of the market, then back at her. "Because I can. And because it matters to you." A long pause passed between them. Then Elise gave a small nod. "I'll think about it. Thank you." The following Thursday, her name lit up his phone for the first time. Rachel's coverage got denied for her next round of therapy, Elise said, her voice tight and strained. "I don't know what to do." "I'm on my way," Adrian said immediately. "Text me your address." Her apartment was small, modest but filled with warmth, secondhand furniture, framed snapshots of better days. Rachel was seated on the couch, papers spread out around her, like a storm insurance forms, denial letters, receipts. She looked like a softer, more fragile version of Elise. "So, you're Adrian," she said, eyeing him curiously. "My sister talks about you a lot." "Does she?" Adrian turned to Elise with an arched brow. "All complaints," she said quickly, blushing. "He's here to untangle the insurance mess." For the next few hours, Adrian made calls with the confidence of a man used to finding solutions. He maneuvered through red tape with the same precision he brought to his boardrooms. By the time the sun set, Rachel's therapy was reinstated for 6 more months. How did you pull that off?" Elise asked, watching him slice vegetables awkwardly in her narrow kitchen as they prepared a simple dinner. "Sometimes it's just about knowing who to talk to," he said, clumsily dicing a tomato. "Though clearly I'm less skilled in this department." "You're hopeless," Elise laughed, stepping behind him to guide his hand. "I'm learning," Adrian said, quietly enjoying the closeness. In the weeks that followed, their worlds began to blend. He took her to private restaurant tastings, introduced her to orchestral performances, showed her the view from his penthouse where the city glittered below like a promise. In return, she brought him to community theater shows, tucked away bookshops, and taught him how to cook a decent pasta sauce without needing a culinary team behind him. One evening, as they walked along the quiet lakefront, Adrian spoke up. "My friends think I've lost my mind," he said, half laughing. "Cole keeps asking what you've done to me." Elise looked up at him, amused. "What have I done to you?" Adrian thought for a moment. "You've made me see things differently." When an invitation arrived for a charity gala supporting medical research, Adrian didn't hesitate. "I want you to come with me," he said one night after Elise's shift. "It's for a good cause. And I want you there," she hesitated. "I don't exactly have gala-ready attire hanging in my closet." "I'll take care of it," he said gently. "I don't want you buying me clothes," she replied, her tone guarded. "Then rent something," Adrian offered. "Please, I'm not good at these things without someone real beside me." The night of the gala, Adrian waited outside her apartment, checking his watch more times than he cared to admit. When Elise stepped out in a simple, elegant blue gown, her hair swept up, Adrian forgot how to speak. You look beautiful," he finally managed. Elise smiled, cheeks tinged with color. "You clean up pretty well yourself." At the gala, Elise's warmth surprised everyone. She didn't try to impress, but people were drawn to her sincerity, her insight. Adrian watched her from across the room, quietly proud. He wasn't used to people seeing past his fortune, his name, his image. But Elise, she didn't just see through it. She saw him. Adrian stood in quiet conversation with a hospital administrator, discussing policies he barely understood, his mind drifting elsewhere. Thomas, one of his longtime colleagues, leaned over and murmured, "Your date is remarkable. Definitely not your usual type." "She's not my date," Adrian replied instinctively. He paused, searching for a word that didn't feel too fragile. But nothing fit. Later that evening, they stepped out onto the terrace. The city stretched before them, glimmering, alive, but strangely still. A soft breeze moved between them. "Thank you for tonight," Elise said, her voice quiet, sincere. "It wasn't as terrible as I imagined." Adrian chuckled. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week." She smiled, and for a moment their eyes held an unspoken acknowledgement of everything that had been slowly unfolding between them. Then, without thinking, Adrian leaned in. This time, there was no game, no challenge, no bet. Just two people meeting in the middle of something real. Elise's hand rested gently against his cheek as their lips met. Slow, honest, unguarded. But then Adrian's phone buzzed, sharp and relentless. He pulled away, answering reluctantly. As he listened, his expression changed, his body stilling. "What is it?" Elise asked, concerned. He looked at her, voice hollow. "My father, he's gone." The funeral was elegant, but distant, filled with handshakes and hushed voices, more business associates than friends. Adrian stood at the grave like a statue, the words of the minister washing over him phrases like loving father and devoted man that felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's story. Elise was there, quiet and steady beside him. He had told her she didn't need to come. "I know I don't need to," she had replied, "but I want to." She didn't speak much that day, just rested her hand on his arm now and then, a simple reminder that he wasn't completely alone. As the mourners began to leave, business cards still clutched in their palms, Adrian and Elise walked slowly back to the car. "Was any of that true?" she asked softly. "About him being a loving father?" Adrian let out a sharp breath that was almost a laugh, not a word. Inside the car, silence held for a while. Then the dam broke. He spoke of a man who had measured worth by achievement, affection by silence, of the years spent chasing a begging approval that never came. "The last time we spoke was 3 years ago," Adrian admitted. "He told me I'd never make it, that everything I built would fall apart, that I was a disappointment." Elise said nothing at first, just wrapped her hand around his. "He was wrong," she said gently. "Was he?" Adrian murmured, staring out the window. "I've built 10 restaurants. I have more money than I could ever spend, and the only person standing beside me at my father's funeral is someone I kissed on a dare a month ago." Elise turned to him, voice low but steady. "You have me because you showed me the part of you no one else sees. Not the name, not the money, just you." That night, she stayed at his penthouse, not as a lover, but as the only person who understood the grief that came not just from loss, but from what had never been. In the days that followed, Adrian opened up in ways he never had before. He spoke of childhood memories, some warm, most cold. Elise shared her own story, how she had lost both parents 5 years ago, and how, at just 24, she had become everything Rachel needed. "Is that why you always try to carry it all?" Adrian asked one evening as they sat on his balcony, city lights glowing beneath their silence. "Probably," Elise said softly. "When someone depends on you that much, failure just isn't an option." 2 weeks after the funeral, Adrian accompanied Elise to one of Rachel's physical therapy sessions. He watched as Elise encouraged her sister through painful, exhausting exercises, her patience unwavering, her strength quiet but powerful. As they were leaving the medical center, a billing clerk pulled Elise aside. From a distance, Adrian couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw the change in her expression. She paled. Her shoulders stiffened. "What's wrong?" he asked. Stepping closer, "What did they say?" Adrian asked as they walked slowly toward the car. "They're challenging the next phase again," Elise replied, her voice tight, eyes fixed on the pavement. "Insurance says it's not medically necessary." Adrian glanced sideways. Her shoulders had tensed again, the familiar weight settling back on her like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. "Let me help," he said gently. "I can take care of it." Elise stopped walking. "Take care of it how?" she asked, her voice guarded. "I can cover Rachel's treatments," Adrian said. "All of them. You wouldn't have to worry about claims or bills or working double shifts anymore." She pulled her hand away. A pause, then her eyes narrowed. "Is that what you think I need?" she said slowly. "For you to just swoop in and fix everything with a blank check?" "I'm just trying to help," Adrian said, caught off guard by her tone. "By making me into some charity project?" Elise crossed her arms, her voice rising. By deciding what's best for me without asking. That's not what I meant, isn't it? She cut in. You see a problem, you throw money at it. That's your solution. That's what you do. What's wrong with trying to make things easier for you? For Rachel? Adrian asked, frustration leaking into his voice. Because I have to do this on my own, Elise replied, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. I've taken care of Rachel since I was 24. I've kept us afloat. I don't need a wealthy boyfriend stepping in to rescue us. The word hung there, boyfriend, neither of them having said it aloud before. Adrian took a breath, his voice softer now. I'm not trying to rescue you. I care about you. About both of you. What's the point of all this of what I've built if I can't use it to help the people who matter? Her features softened slightly, but her gaze didn't waver. I know you mean well, and I'm grateful, but this isn't the way. You can't just fix everything for me. I need to figure out how to do that myself. He nodded slowly, unsure of what else to say. They parted that evening, with the air still tense between them. Elise appreciated his heart, but not the way he used it. Adrian respected her strength, but didn't understand why she kept him at arm's length when all he wanted was to carry some of her burden. The next morning, Adrian made a decision. Set up a private account, he told his lawyer. I want to cover all of Rachel Morgan's medical expenses. Quietly. No names, no connections. Just make sure she's taken care of. 3 days later, Elise called him. Her voice was full of disbelief. Insurance just approved everything. No explanation. They reversed the denial out of nowhere. That's incredible, Adrian said, forcing his voice into a tone of pleasant surprise. Really? That's wonderful. But inside, guilt coiled in his chest like smoke silent, choking. That weekend, they met for dinner. The candle between them flickered gently, but something in the atmosphere felt still, heavy. Elise watched him for a long moment. Did you have anything to do with the insurance approval? Adrian hesitated. The pause was long enough. I made a few calls, he admitted. She set her fork down, her expression unreadable. After I asked you not to. I didn't pay for it, he said quickly. I just put pressure where it mattered. Without telling me, Elise said. Without listening, I was trying to help. I don't need to be saved, Adrian, she said quietly. I need to be heard, understood. She reached for her purse, stood up slowly. I think we need some space. Time to figure out if we're even walking the same path. He didn't stop her. He knew she needed the choice to walk away. As he watched her disappear into the evening, it struck him harder than he expected that in his attempt to help her, he had become exactly what she feared most. A man who meant well, but didn't listen. And now the distance between them wasn't just emotional. It was real, and it was his. Adrian stared at the quarterly reports strewn across his desk, the numbers blurring into nothingness. It had been a month since Elise walked away from their dinner table. A month of silence, of space, of absence. He hadn't tried to contact her not because he didn't want to, but because, for once, he was respecting the boundaries someone else had drawn. Still, every morning without her felt a little heavier. The city, for all its lights and movement, had grown strangely quiet. You look like hell, Cole said, dropping uninvited into the chair across from him. Adrian didn't look up. Good to see you too. Still brooding over the waitress? Adrian's eyes flashed. Her name is Elise. Cole raised his hands. Elise, then. Have you called her? She asked for space. Since when do you give up that easily? Cole challenged. You never walk away from something that matters. Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhaling. This isn't a deal I can negotiate or win with strategy. I messed up. I didn't listen. I just did what I always do. Tried to fix things my way. So now, you're just going to sit here, staring at spreadsheets and punishing yourself? Before Adrian could answer, his assistant stepped in. Mr. Vale, here's the file you requested Mira Trattoria's current financials. He took the folder with a nod. Once the door closed, Cole raised an eyebrow. Mira Trattoria? He said slowly. Isn't that where Elise worked? Worked, Adrian corrected. They're struggling. The owner's considering a sale. And you're thinking of buying it? Cole asked. It's a good investment, Adrian said quickly. Too quickly. Right, Cole replied dryly. No connection at all to a certain blonde server who told you not to fix her life with your wallet. Adrian flipped through the pages, his brow furrowed. They're 3 months away from closing. If it shuts down, the entire staff are friends, her colleagues, they'll be out of work. I could step in, keep the team, upgrade the equipment, offer proper marketing, and when Elise finds out? Cole interrupted. How do you think she'll feel knowing you stepped in again right after she told you not to? Adrian closed the folder, the weight of the decision thick in the room. You're right, he said finally, but I can't just do nothing. I need to help, somehow. Just not like before, maybe, Cole offered gently. You could try asking her what she actually needs. A wild idea, Adrian muttered. But maybe it's time. Across the city, Elise was having her own conversation. You miss him, Rachel said simply, shifting carefully on the couch. Her recovery was progressing, but each movement was still deliberate. Elise folded a towel with more force than necessary. It's complicated. He helped with the insurance, Rachel pointed out, even if he did it the wrong way. That's the problem, Elise replied. He thinks caring means fixing. I need someone who walks beside me, not someone who paves the path for me. So tell him that, Rachel said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. It's called communication. You should try it. Just then, Elise's phone rang. Her manager's name lit up on the screen. When she hung up, her face was pale. They're selling the restaurant, she said quietly. Is Martin okay? Rachel asked. He can't keep it afloat. He's looking for a buyer, but most likely it'll be turned into something else. Everyone will lose their jobs. I'm sorry, Rachel whispered. I thought things were finally settling down. Elise touched her sister's hand. We'll figure it out. We always do. But the following week brought an unexpected twist. Martin gathered the staff for an all-hands meeting at Mira Trattoria. His expression was tired but hopeful. I found an investment partner, he announced, someone willing to help keep us going. I'll stay on as managing owner. And most importantly, no one's losing their job. A ripple of surprise spread through the room. Relief, joy, confusion. Elise stood still, her mind already asking the question, who? And deep down she already knew the answer. A wave of surprise and cautious hope swept through the staff at Mira Trattoria. The restaurant was saved, but no one seemed to know who had done it. Who's the investor? Elise asked Martin, suspicion laced in her voice. They've asked to stay anonymous, Martin replied. All I can say is, they believe in what we're doing here, and they want to see it continue. Her first thought was Adrian, but she quickly brushed it aside. No, if he had done this, he would have told her. Anonymity wasn't his style. His name was stamped onto every building, every menu, every venture he touched. Yet, over the following weeks, the restaurant began to change quietly. New kitchen equipment arrived. The reservation system was replaced, and a simple marketing campaign drew in fresh faces. But the soul of the place, the menu, the team, the warm hum of familiarity remained untouched. One evening, while prepping for closing, Elise overheard Martin on a call with the beverage supplier. The investor made me sign a clause, he said with a chuckle. Everyone's job is guaranteed for at least 2 years. Staff retention was non-negotiable. That kind of condition didn't come from a typical investor. That came from someone who cared, someone who had a personal stake in the people behind the aprons and table numbers. Her suspicion returned. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian was building something entirely different. It had started with a late-night thought, a fragment of conversation with Elise about how hard it was to navigate healthcare, a memory of Rachel and physical therapy, of Elise calculating bills between shifts. Now it was becoming something real. A foundation, his lawyer confirmed, focused on helping families manage medical expenses. Is that correct? Yes, Adrian nodded. Separate from the restaurant group. Independent board. I'll fund it initially, but I want it built to stand on its own. Open to other donors. Do you have a name in mind? Adrian paused. He thought of bridges, the ones between people, between struggle and stability. The Bridge Foundation, he said finally, for families who just need help crossing difficult waters. For the first time in his life, Adrian wasn't just giving money. He was building something out of understanding, not to control, but to empower. He remembered Elise's voice. I don't need to be saved. I need to be understood. And this was his way of saying he had listened. 3 months after their last conversation, Adrian's phone rang. It was Cole. I did something you may not appreciate, his friend said, without any kind of build-up. Adrian sat up. What did you do? I stopped by Mira Trattoria, ran into Elise, and I might have mentioned who really saved the place. Cole's here, Adrian sighed, rubbing his temple. We agreed? She deserved to know, Cole cut in. You two are too damn stubborn to fix this yourselves. After the call, Adrian waited. Not for thanks, but for something. A message, a knock, a confrontation, anything. But nothing came. Just silence. Except this time, the silence didn't feel like distance. It felt like decision. That night, he stood at his stove, cooking a simple pasta dish Elise had once taught him in a kitchen too pristine to feel like home. The smell reminded him of her laughter, the way she corrected his knife grip, the way she looked at him like she saw him, and he wondered if some bridges, once broken, could ever truly be rebuilt. Just as he drained the pasta, a knock came at the door. He froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. A part of him didn't want to answer. But a greater part, the part that still hoped, pulled him forward. He opened the door. There she was, Elise, hair windblown, cheeks flushed, as if she'd rushed to get there. Eyes steady. You saved the restaurant, she said, without a hello. Anonymously, Adrian searched her face. Marshall talks too much. Why didn't you tell me? For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, she added, May I come in? Adrian stepped aside, allowing Elise into his apartment. Only then did he remember the soft bubbling from the kitchen. I was cooking, he said awkwardly. Your recipe. Elise followed him in, the scent of simmering tomato and basil filling the space. She raised an eyebrow as she watched him stir the sauce. Is that my tomato basil? I've been practicing, Adrian admitted. It's still not as good as yours. For a moment, they just stood there, surrounded by something that felt strangely familiar. The kitchen. The quiet. The shared memory of a recipe. The 3 months apart suddenly felt both like an eternity and like no time at all. Why did you do it like that? Elise asked softly. The restaurant, anonymous support. No headlines. No Adrian Vale stamped on every wall. He turned to face her. Because you were right, he said simply. I tried to fix everything the way I always have without listening, without understanding. I needed to step back and ask what was really needed. He gestured to the kitchen island. She sat, still in her coat, a signal that she wasn't sure how long she'd stay. I heard you started some kind of foundation too, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. Adrian nodded. The Bridge Foundation. It helps families navigate healthcare costs and insurance hurdles like the ones you and Rachel faced. It was inspired by her, Elise said, watching him. By me. Yes, Adrian replied, not shying away, but it runs independently. There's a real board, real medical professionals. I just provided the seed to get it started. She took a bite of the pasta. Her expression shifted just slightly. This is actually not bad. Adrian allowed a small smile. I'll take that as high praise. They ate in silence for a while. Not awkward, just thoughtful. I may have overreacted, Elise said eventually, her tone measured. About the insurance. I know it came from a good place, even if it didn't land that way. And I should have listened, Adrian replied. Not assumed I knew what was best. Elise set her fork down. What I needed was a partner, someone who respected my independence, who understood that helping isn't about taking over someone else's life, Adrian's voice lowered. And what do you need now? She paused. Then slowly, Elise shrugged off her coat and draped it over the back of the chair. I need to know if you've figured out the difference. Adrian didn't answer right away. He thought about it seriously. Helping, he said at last, means offering support while still honoring the other person's voice. Taking over means making decisions without asking what they truly want. Textbook answer, Elise teased. But there was a softness in her tone, a peace that hadn't been there before. I've had 3 months to study, Adrian replied with a quiet grin. Elise stood and walked over to the window, looking out over the sparkling cityscape. Adrian stayed seated, letting her breathe. Rachel's doing better, she said eventually. She's starting college next semester. That's wonderful, Adrian said sincerely. And I got accepted into nursing school, Elise added, turning slightly. It's part-time, so I can keep working. Adrian's eyes lit up with pride. That's amazing. You never mentioned wanting to be a nurse. We never got far enough, she said simply. There's a lot we didn't get to. He stood and joined her at the window, close but not pressing. I'd like to hear it, he said quietly, if you're ready to share. Elise turned to him, her eyes open, unguarded. I missed you, she said. Even when I was angry, I still missed you. I missed you too, Adrian whispered. Every day. If we try again, Elise said cautiously, we need to be equals. Different lives, different tools, but equal in how we walk this road. I want that, Adrian said without hesitation. I've never had that before, but I want it now with you. For the first time that evening, Elise smiled. The tension in her shoulders melted a little. So, what now? Now, Adrian said, reaching gently for her hand, we start over. No bets, no rescues, just two people figuring it out, together. Elise laced her fingers through his. I like that. They sat on Adrian's balcony, the city glowing beneath them, wrapped in quiet conversation about the months they'd spent apart and everything they had learned during that time. Adrian shared his newest plans, implementing family-first policies across all his restaurants, inspired by the stories of his staff people, like Elise, who had shouldered far more than their roles ever required. What about the foundation? Elise asked. Will you still be involved day to day? I was hoping, Adrian said carefully, that you might be. Elise looked up, surprised. With your experience and now your nursing studies, you'd understand what these families really need, better than I ever could. You'd trust me with that? Completely, Adrian said without hesitation. I built it so someone like you could lead it. For a moment, the weight of those words hung between them, honest, open, free of ego. As the night stretched on, neither seemed in a hurry to end it. And when Elise finally glanced at the time, Adrian asked the question that had been waiting on his lips all evening. Will you stay? She hesitated, then smiled, just to sleep. We're starting over, remember? The next morning, they made breakfast together in Adrian's rarely used kitchen. The rhythm of shared space, coffee mugs, toast, her laughter filling corners that had always been quiet felt more natural than anything he'd ever known. I have an idea, Elise said, drying a plate. Let's host a dinner. Rachel, Marshall, the team from Mira, some of your people too. Bring both our worlds together. I'd like that, Adrian said, his smile softening. My place or yours? Elise laughed. Mine could fit in your walk-in closet. Size doesn't matter, Adrian replied, then added, grinning, though, I do have the better view, and the better kitchen, she conceded. As they made plans, Adrian couldn't help but think how far he'd come from that first reckless dare. The kiss that began with pride had ended with something far more rare, a partnership. What are you thinking about? Elise asked, noticing his faraway look. Sometimes, Adrian said, pulling her gently toward him, losing a bet is the best win of all. She smiled against his chest. Just don't try testing that theory on any more waitresses. Never, Adrian whispered, kissing her forehead. I found the only one that matters. If you'd told me 2 years ago I'd be planning a wedding with a millionaire restaurateur, I would have laughed in your face, Elise said, adjusting the simple, elegant diamond ring on her finger. Rachel laughed beside her as they strolled through the park under soft spring skies. And if you told me I'd be finishing my freshman year of college while working part-time at his restaurant, I'd have said you were delusional. Their smiles were easy, natural. Rachel moved with confidence now, strong and steady, the pain and uncertainty of her recovery long behind her. It's been quite a year, hasn't it? Elise said, her voice touched with wonder. 13 months had passed since the night she knocked on Adrian's door. Since then, their lives once so separate had braided together in ways neither could have imagined. The Bridge Foundation's approval rates are up 30% this quarter, Elise noted, glancing at an email on her phone. We're helping more families than ever. Under her leadership, the foundation had blossomed. While continuing her nursing program, Elise had built a team of people who understood because they had lived it too. Adrian had provided the resources, but he had given her complete autonomy to shape the mission. And the mentorship program? Elise asked. 10 new students this summer, Rachel beamed. Marshall and Adrian's little project is growing fast. The program had become a launchpad, giving young people from underserved communities a chance to learn the restaurant business, not just as jobs, but as careers. Elise paused, watching a group of children race past them through the trees. You know, she said softly, I used to think survival meant doing everything alone. And now? Rachel asked. Now I know. It's about choosing who you let walk beside you. And beside her, Rachel just smiled, knowing exactly who Elise meant. The early summer sun filtered through the trees as Elise and Rachel turned the corner, their conversation light and easy. Adrian was already at the cafe, seated with Cole, both deep in discussion over coffee. When he saw them, Adrian stood with that familiar smile that still made Elise's heart do something quiet and steady. There they are, he said, rising to kiss her softly before pulling out a chair. How was your meeting this morning? He asked. Productive, Elise replied, setting her bag down. The hospital partnerships, moving forward, will be able to place patient advocates in 3 more locations by fall. Cole let out a low whistle. Who would have guessed that a foolish dare would lead to all this? Best $50,000 I ever lost, Adrian replied, grinning. Rachel leaned in, teasing. Will someone please tell me what exactly happened that night? Elise always goes suspiciously vague when I ask. Adrian and Elise exchanged a glance, the kind only 2 people who had been through the storm and found calm could share. Let's just say, Adrian began, your sister made an impression. Understatement of the year, Cole muttered into his cup. Their talk drifted to wedding plans. Nothing extravagant, elegant. Yes, but thoughtful. The kind of ceremony that felt like them. Grounded, genuine, and full of quiet meaning. They had chosen to hold it at Mira Trattoria, the very place where their paths had first crossed, now lovingly restored, with Martin proudly offering to host. The contractor finished the house renovations yesterday, Adrian said as brunch wound down. We can move in whenever we're ready. They'd bought a home nestled between the city's rhythm and the stillness of the suburbs, close enough to their work, but with a garden and space for whatever the future held. I still can't believe you gave up that penthouse view, Cole said, shaking his head. Some views, Adrian replied, his eyes on Elise, are worth more than others. Later that afternoon, they took a quiet detour, one that neither suggested, but both needed. The street outside Mira Trattoria was quiet between meal services. The air was warm, familiar. Do you remember where we were standing? Adrian asked, scanning the sidewalk. Elise pointed. Right about there. You stopped me while I was trying to deliver a tray of drinks. He guided her gently to that exact spot. I was so focused on proving something that night, I never imagined it would lead here. To be fair, Elise said, smiling, I didn't make it easy. I think I threatened to expose you to the world. You weren't wrong, Adrian said softly. That was who I was. She reached up and touched his cheek. And now, he said, I'm just a man who's grateful that the woman he loves said yes. Elise laughed lightly. I still wonder what would have happened if someone else had walked by that night. I don't, Adrian replied without hesitation. Every choice, every mistake, every moment, they led me to you. The golden light of the setting sun bathed the sidewalk in a soft glow. Behind them, the lights of the restaurant flickered on, casting a quiet halo over the place where their unlikely story had begun. You know, Adrian said, tilting his head with a playful smile, we never really recreated that first kiss. You mean the one where you ambushed me? Elise teased. And I threatened to destroy your reputation? That's the one, he chuckled. But this time, no bets. Just us. She wrapped her arms around him. Well, when you put it that way. And when they kissed this time, it was nothing like the first. It held no bravado, no challenge, only the certainty of two people who had seen the very worst of each other and chose love anyway. Their journey had begun with a dare, a kiss meant to win a game. But love, the real kind, has a way of slipping through the cracks of what we think we're looking for and gently delivering exactly what we need. Sometimes, the person who changes everything walks into your life when you're not ready, not looking, not perfect, but open just enough for something real to begin. Because some love stories don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive quietly, with a mistake, a lesson, a second chance, and if you're lucky, with someone who reminds you, you don't need to be saved. You just need to be seen. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Through every quiet moment, every unexpected turn, and every tender silence, your presence has meant the world. Stories like this are not just about love. They're about healing, growth, and the quiet courage it takes to open your heart again. If this story touched something within you, know that you're not alone. We all carry pieces of ourselves. We hope someone will understand, and sometimes it takes just one connection to remind us how deeply human we are. Thank you for listening with your heart. Until next time, stay kind, stay open, and never stop believing in second chances.